The gravel crunched under the tires as Chris's car pulled into the long dirt driveway of the farmhouse. Daniel sat silently in the passenger seat, fingers twitching against his thigh. He had forgotten how far out this place was: wide open fields, dry wind across the grass, and the kind of silence that felt like it wanted to ask you something uncomfortable. "Still looks the same," Chris said with a hollow smile. His voice felt distant, like it was bouncing off walls that weren't there. He reached for Daniel's hand, but the touch was mechanical, brief, almost apologetic. Daniel nodded, his eyes scanning the sprawling landscape. "Yeah," he murmured. "Still the same." But nothing felt the same. They'd been together for 4 years, and the closeness that once came naturally now felt like a performance, a tired routine of shared glances and stale touches. Chris had been emotionally absent for months, buried in work, avoiding real conversations, loving Daniel like someone who couldn't remember why they started. Daniel missed being looked at like he mattered, and he didn't know how much longer he could carry the weight of silence. The house came into view. A rustic 2-story structure surrounded by wooden fencing and tall trees. Friends were already there, voices, laughter, music leaking from the open windows. A weekend getaway with people they barely saw anymore. Chris thought it would be good for them. Daniel wasn't so sure. Inside, the warmth hit immediately, both from the cozy space and the gathering of old college friends. Daniel put on his best smile, greeting people he hadn't seen in years. Hugs, handshakes, teasing. He played along. Then came him. "Daniel?" a deep voice called from behind. Daniel turned, and there he was. Tall, broad-shouldered, effortlessly confident. He was Chris's childhood best friend, someone Daniel had met only twice before. The kind of man whose presence filled the room without effort. His smile was slow, crooked, a little dangerous. Daniel swallowed. "Hey, wow, Luke." Luke's hug was firm and lingering, his hand pressing briefly into Daniel's lower back before letting go. "You look good. Real good." Daniel flushed. "You too." Chris arrived just in time to slap Luke's shoulder and pull him into a bro-y embrace. "Still handsome and full of shit, huh?" "Wouldn't be me otherwise," Luke replied, grinning. But even as they laughed, Daniel felt the heat of Luke's eyes returning to him. Not in a casual way. Not in a friendly way. It was focused. Undeniable. Throughout the afternoon, the tension curled like smoke in Daniel's lungs. He watched Chris from across the room, laughing with the guys, drink in hand, checking his phone every few minutes. Meanwhile, Luke kept appearing near Daniel, passing him a drink, touching his elbow lightly, catching his gaze in crowded rooms. By sunset, the bonfire was lit outside, casting warm flickers across everyone's faces. They gathered around it, blankets and beers in hand, laughter spilling into the cooling night. Daniel sat on a wooden bench, slightly away from the circle. He told himself he just needed space. But then Luke sat down beside him. Close. Too close. Their thighs pressed together. Daniel didn't move. Neither did Luke. The fire cracked. The night wrapped around them like a secret. "You okay?" Luke asked, his voice low, meant only for Daniel. Daniel nodded barely. "Yeah. Just tired." Luke tilted his head slightly. "You sure?" Daniel exhaled slowly. That question. Not the words, the way he said them. Like he was seeing him. Like he wasn't asking about tonight, but about everything. "I think so," Daniel answered. But even to himself, it didn't sound convincing. There was a pause. Heavy. Loaded. "You're quieter than I remember," Luke said. Daniel glanced at him. "A lot changes in 4 years." Luke didn't look away. His voice dropped even softer. "Some things don't." And then there was silence. Not awkward, charged. The firelight danced in Luke's eyes, and Daniel could feel every breath between them, every heartbeat that echoed with something unspoken. They stared. Not just a glance, but something that stretched, that pulsed, that dared. Daniel's mouth went dry. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. He should have looked away. He didn't. Luke's lips parted like he was going to say something. But someone shouted from across the yard, breaking the spell. Daniel blinked, looked away, stood abruptly. I should go find Chris. Luke nodded slowly, not moving, just watching him, like he already knew. As Daniel walked away, he felt Luke's gaze burn into his back, not with judgment, but invitation. Daniel didn't sleep well that night. Even in bed next to Chris, the man he had once built a life around, the mattress felt like a canyon. Chris fell asleep quickly, as always, with his back turned, body curled toward the wall. Daniel lay staring at the ceiling, every flicker of firelight from the windows reminding him of Luke's voice. You sure? It haunted him. Not just because of how it was said, but because of what it made him feel. Desired. Noticed. Wanted. The next morning brought strong sunlight and the smell of coffee drifting through the farmhouse. Daniel padded barefoot to the kitchen, still half asleep. He didn't expect to find Luke already there, shirtless, a mug in hand, standing by the window like a painting brought to life. Morning, Luke said without turning. Daniel cleared his throat. Hey! Luke glanced over his shoulder, eyes moving down Daniel's body in a way that didn't try to hide it. Daniel suddenly felt too bare in his thin t-shirt and boxers. I made extra, Luke said, nodding to the coffee. Thought you might be up early. Daniel poured a cup, careful not to let their hands touch. Didn't sleep well. Luke didn't ask why. He just sipped his coffee and leaned back against the counter like he had all the time in the world. They stood in silence, the kind that buzzes just beneath the skin. You busy today? Luke asked eventually. Daniel shook his head. No plans. Come for a walk with me. There's a trail behind the property. Quiet. You'll like it. It wasn't a question. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Okay. They walked through the trees, sunlight filtering in through thick branches, birds chirping distantly. It was peaceful, isolating, dangerous. So, Luke said, casually brushing against Daniel's arm. You and Chris, everything good? The question cut through the calm like a knife. Daniel took a deep breath. We're fine. Luke raised an eyebrow. That didn't sound very convincing. Daniel stopped walking. What do you want me to say? Luke turned to face him fully. I want the truth. No script. No protecting him. Just tell me. Daniel stared at the dirt, the leaves at their feet. Then, finally, I don't know who we are anymore. We used to laugh. We used to talk. Now it's like we're roommates. Luke's voice softened. You deserve more than that. Daniel's throat tightened. I don't know if I do. You do. The way Luke said it, steady, assured, made Daniel believe it, if only for a moment. They walked again. This time slower. Closer. Luke's hand brushed Daniel's once, then didn't move away. Daniel didn't pull away either. By the time they returned to the house, Daniel's pulse had become a rhythm he couldn't quiet. Later that afternoon, Chris was on the porch talking business on his phone, again. Daniel leaned against the railing, listening to his boyfriend's voice from across the deck. It was the same distant tone he used for everything now. We should talk, Daniel said softly after Chris hung up. Chris blinked. About what? Daniel didn't answer. What was the point? Whatever he said, Chris would hear as criticism, not truth. He always did lately. I'm going for a nap, Chris mumbled, brushing past him without eye contact. Daniel stood there for a long time, the sun sinking lower behind the trees. He didn't hear Luke walk up behind him until he spoke. He didn't ask how you were, did he? Daniel shook his head slowly. No. Luke stepped closer. I've been watching you. Daniel turned his head just enough to meet his eyes. Luke's voice dropped. You shrink around him. You don't even know it. You stop laughing. You get small. Daniel's chest rose then fell. I used to feel seen. You are seen. The silence between them wasn't shy anymore. It was pulsing. I want you to feel like yourself again, Luke said. Then, without warning, he leaned in. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. Just proximity. Breath to breath. A closeness so intimate it felt like it could shatter something inside Daniel. They were just staring, frozen in a heat that neither of them tried to explain away. Then Luke whispered, low, breathless, certain. "I want you so bad right now." Daniel didn't move, didn't speak. His whole body buzzed with electricity, frozen in the echo of those 7 words. The door behind them creaked open suddenly. "Chris." "Hey," he called, yawning. "Dinner's ready." Daniel jolted like he'd been caught naked. Luke didn't move, didn't flinch. Just smirked slightly. As if to say this isn't over. Daniel turned to follow Chris inside, heart pounding, body warm, breath caught in his throat. He didn't look back. But he felt it. Luke's eyes still on him. Still wanting. Daniel couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear. From something worse, anticipation. He stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, heart hammering, fingers gripping the edge of the sink. His lips were still tingling. Not from a kiss, but from how close Luke had come. From the things he had said. "I want you so bad right now." No one had said that to him in years. Not like that. Not with that fire in their voice. Not with that ache behind their eyes. Not Chris. Daniel splashed cold water on his face. He needed to breathe, to think, to stop the tremor in his chest before it burned a hole through his ribs. But deep down, he already knew. He wasn't going to stop this. That night, the house was quiet. Dinner was tense. Chris was unusually present, laughing louder than necessary, touching Daniel's back during conversations, throwing out affectionate comments like confetti. Daniel forced a smile, chewed too long, drank too much wine. Luke barely spoke. He didn't need to. Every time Daniel looked up, Luke was already watching him, not with desire, but with something deeper. Ownership. Like he already knew the decision had been made. By midnight, most of the guests had gone to bed. Chris passed out in their room, fully clothed, phone still clutched in his hand. Daniel stood in the hallway, staring at the closed guestroom door at the far end. He walked toward it like gravity was pulling him in. He knocked. Luke opened the door instantly, as if he'd been standing behind it. Neither of them spoke. Luke stepped aside. Daniel entered. The door clicked shut behind them. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a bedside lamp. Luke stood still, chest rising and falling, eyes fixed on Daniel like he was something rare, something meant. Daniel reached for him. The kiss was slow, but desperate, not fumbling, not nervous, just full of pent-up hunger and everything unspoken. Hands roamed without hesitation. Mouths opened, closed, parted again. Breathless. Honest. Clothes came off in pieces. Shirts dropped to the floor like confessions. Every exposed inch of skin felt electric. Daniel had forgotten what it was like to be touched with intention, not just out of habit. Luke didn't rush. He took his time. Worshipped every part of Daniel like it was the first time and the last. For a moment, Daniel wasn't someone's boyfriend. He wasn't guilty or conflicted. He was wanted. He was alive. Afterward, they lay there, tangled in sweat and silence. Luke ran a hand down Daniel's spine slowly, thoughtfully. "You okay?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't know. His body said yes. His heart, that was more complicated. Luke shifted onto his side. "I'm not going to pretend this doesn't change things." Daniel sat up, pulling the sheets around his waist. "I don't even know what this is." "It's real," Luke said softly. "That's all I care about." Daniel looked at the door, dread pooling in his stomach. "Chris is going to know. I'm not good at hiding things." "Maybe you don't have to." Daniel blinked. "You want me to tell him?" Luke shrugged, unapologetic. "He's had you for years. And he let you disappear." Daniel stared at the ceiling. "This isn't who I am." "Then who are you?" Luke asked. Silence. Daniel didn't know anymore. The next morning, Chris was already awake. He was in the kitchen, making coffee, trying, it seemed, to act like everything was normal. Daniel sat at the table, stomach twisting. Chris placed a mug in front of him, hesitated, then said, You seem off. Is everything okay? Daniel stared into the coffee. Why now? Chris blinked. What? You're asking how I am. Why now? Chris's jaw tightened. Because I care. Daniel's voice cracked. Then where have you been, Chris? For the past year. Where were you when I needed you? Chris looked stunned. Defensive. I've been trying to hold everything together. Work, money, us. You weren't holding me, Daniel said. They stared at each other. For the first time in months, the silence between them wasn't passive. It was war. Chris lowered his gaze. Did something happen? Daniel didn't speak. He didn't have to. Chris swallowed. His voice dropped to a whisper. It's him, isn't it? Daniel's breath hitched. That was enough. Chris stood, backing away from the table like it had burned him. Jesus, Daniel. You let him. I didn't let anything, Daniel snapped. I fell. Chris's voice cracked. So that's it. I don't know what it is, Daniel said. I just know I felt something. And I haven't felt anything in a long time. Chris's face collapsed. Not into anger, but grief. He left the room without another word. Later, Daniel found Luke outside, smoking on the porch, shirtless again. The same confidence in his posture, but something gentler in his eyes. He knows, Daniel said. Luke nodded. I figured. Daniel looked out at the horizon, where the sky was pink and bleeding into gold. I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, you do, Luke said. You're choosing yourself. Daniel turned to him. Is that what this is? Luke crushed the cigarette into the ashtray. It's a start. Daniel packed slowly. Every shirt folded felt like a question. Every pair of jeans, a memory. His fingers trembled as they brushed over a hoodie that still faintly smelled like Chris's cologne. He wasn't running. He was retreating. And that felt worse somehow. Chris hadn't said much since their confrontation. They shared the same space but not the same air. When they passed each other in the hallway, it was like ghosts gliding past memories that hadn't settled yet. The knock on the door wasn't Chris. It was Luke. He stood there, leaning in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, eyes unreadable. You leaving? Daniel nodded. Yeah. I need to get out of here. Where are you going? I don't know yet. Luke stepped inside. You don't have to go alone. Daniel closed the suitcase. Maybe I do. A beat of silence stretched between them. You regret it? Luke asked quietly. Daniel turned to face him. I don't regret what we did. I regret what it cost. Luke's jaw tensed, but he nodded. I meant what I said, you know. I see you. I want you. Daniel exhaled. That's the problem. You saw me before I saw myself. And now I don't know who that even is. Luke crossed the room and touched Daniel's arm. Then let me help you find him. Daniel looked at him, at this man who made him feel wanted, chosen, alive. The attraction was undeniable, but he didn't know if that was enough. I need to figure out what I want, Daniel said. Not just what feels good in the moment. Luke's eyes flickered with pain, but he didn't pull away. I get it. I do. But if you walk out of here without knowing what this meant, I need to hear you say it did mean something. Daniel's voice dropped. It did. More than I can explain. Luke gave a small, solemn nod, then stepped back. Then I'll wait. If that's what you need. Daniel opened the door for him. Luke hesitated, then left. No kiss. No promise. Just the sound of footsteps down the hall. Chris was sitting on the back porch, hoodie pulled over his head, cigarette burning between his fingers, a habit he only picked up when something was seriously wrong. Daniel stepped out slowly. Can I sit? Chris didn't look at him. You don't have to ask anymore. Daniel lowered himself into the chair beside him. For a long time, there was only the crackle of the cigarette and the sound of the wind. I didn't come here planning to break us, Daniel finally said. But I think we were already broken. Chris let out a dry laugh. You think I don't know that? I just didn't want to say it out loud. Daniel watched the smoke drift upward. When did we stop trying? Chris shrugged. Somewhere between year 2 and year 4. I was lonely, Chris. Chris finally looked at him. I know. And I hated that I didn't know how to fix it. Daniel swallowed hard. I didn't sleep with him to hurt you. I did it because I felt invisible. And for one night I felt seen. Chris's jaw clenched. It does hurt. But I'm not innocent either. I shut you out for months. I forgot how to touch you like you mattered. Daniel blinked fast. So where does that leave us? Chris crushed the cigarette under his heel. Wherever you need it to. Daniel shook his head. That's the problem. I don't know what I need. But I know I can't stay here. Chris nodded, his voice raw. Then go. Not because I hate you. But because I love you enough to let you find what's missing. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He reached for Chris's hand. They held it for a moment, warm, trembling, familiar. Then Daniel let go. The sun was rising as he loaded the last of his things into the trunk. The air was crisp, scented with dew and ash from last night's fire. It smelled like endings. And beginnings. Luke stood at the edge of the driveway, hands in his pockets, waiting. Not pleading. Just present. Daniel approached him slowly. I'm not choosing anyone right now, he said. Luke nodded. That's still a choice. I need space to breathe. To feel like I'm mine again. Luke stepped forward and leaned close, not touching. Then breathe. And when you're ready, if you ever want to feel like we could be something real, you'll know where to find me. Daniel gave a small smile. You're infuriatingly patient. I'm not in a rush to forget you. They stared for a beat. Then Daniel got in the car. He didn't look back as he drove away. But in the mirror, he saw them both, Chris sitting alone on the porch and Luke standing by the road. And in the middle him. Somewhere between who he was and who he might become.